Hello and welcome to Weekend Rental, episode 17. We're the podcast that talks about gaming, geek culture, and whatever else comes to mind. My name is Ryan, and with me today we've got Andy.
Hello.
And Justin.
Hey, everyone.
All right, so as usual, we're going to kick things off by diving straight into Buy, Rent, Burn. If you are not familiar with the podcast, this is the section where we pick 3 video games. We each pick one game, and we play them all. And we decide which of those games we would personally buy, rent, or burn. The system of choice this month, or this episode rather, is the Sega Genesis. And Andy has gone with Puggsy. Justin has gone with The Tick. And I've gone with Death Duel. So those are our games. And now we're going to go back through and just kind of hear a little bit about them and discuss them briefly before we make our decisions. We will start off with Andy's pick, Puggsy. Again, this came out in 1993. The description on this one, Puggsy is no ordinary game. Using the unique system of total object interaction, or TOI for short, you have to guide Puggsy through some of the best puzzles and most frantic arcade action ever seen in his quest to retrieve his stolen spaceship. Incorporating graphic techniques never seen before, fantastic gameplay, plus a complete junior section for the younger player, Puggsy is destined to become the next worldwide smash hit. That is a very BS description for a game. They love the game that they made.
Best puzzles?
Does it live up to that? Yeah.
Frantic action? The only frantic action I had was stopping all the barrels that I stacked up from falling.
The shaking when you run into them too.
I just imagine these guys every trade show too with Puggsy, like, hey, you know what our game's got? It doesn't have blast processing. It has total object interaction. TOI. Yeah.
We got the new
and everyone's just looking at them like, what?
It's interesting. It's certainly something that you don't see in those old games, is that object picking up and actually using it. And I don't know, it's almost like it's got some sort of physics in it. You can use a gun for traversal.
Yeah.
Way before Portal did it. So
also, I'd like to point out that when you first pick up the gun, that it's so badass that Puggsy just grabs guns gangster style, arm up in the air over his head.
Yep.
Shoots. I don't know, that is quite the animation for a blob using a gun.
It's just kind of funny because obviously the first levels are almost like tutorial. They're so short and they just want you to do the one action that they want you to do in order to pass the level.
Which in the first case is walk right.
Yeah.
That's literally the interaction. Can you walk right? Let's test this. Level 1.
I couldn't believe that. I saw this and I'm like, oh, is this one of those games that has 500 levels, And it's just increasingly difficult, just little by little. But
my 4-year-old son was watching me play the first level, and when I walked through and exited the stage, he's like, there were no bad guys? I'm like, I guess not. Yeah, my mind is just as blown as yours right now. I have no idea. When a 4-year-old realizes that that's strange, though, that's a problem.
The real skill is whether or not you bring that seashell with you to the exit, because you get bonus points if you bring the seashell to the exit.
I hate those situations where you're sitting there with 3 things at the end of the level, and you're like, which one is going to give me the most points?
Yeah.
I hope I don't choose poorly.
Yeah, but I love that level where it's you grab the gun, and obviously there's a crab there right away to shoot. So that's cool. But right after that, it's hey, you need to climb up this ledge, and you basically hook the end of your gun on top of it, and you kind of bounce up. And that's what a lot of this game is getting up to a ledge with an item and just kind of bouncing up to the ledge. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting, but when you have too many items involved, especially a lot of the bonus stuff and a lot of the extra stuff is higher up, oh, you need to stack these 5 barrels to get up there. And you just bump it a little bit and all the barrels just come falling down or get all messed up.
Yeah.
It's incredibly frustrating. So toward the end, I wasn't even going for the higher up things. I would find the exit and be like, okay, what do I need to get to it? And that's about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because like when you first start out, and like definitely the first couple levels, like you're very much like, oh, this is kind of a cool, interesting little platformer, and then yeah, it becomes apparently clear that this is more of like a puzzle solving game that just happens to have like a platformer skinned around, the majority of the movement. But I don't know, it's got an art style and like animations that like for the Genesis, I think kind of stand out. I mean, even that generation, like it's just like you said, like the almost physics based aspect with the pieces you interact with is really cool.
Yeah, the graphics are almost like pre-rendered, not quite as good as
Yeah.
like Donkey Kong Country, but it's kind of somewhere in between that, I would say.
Yeah, they definitely have like
Yeah.
some depth to them. Like there's like those characters seem like they're almost popping out at you.
Yeah,
I will say I hated the map screen. I don't know whose design choice it was to like take 80% of the main screen with just a static map and like have your level select be this tiny little wedge in the corner.
yeah.
Like that was awful. Like who wants that?
I replayed the same level probably 3 times, I think it was,
Yeah.
before I realized that it wasn't the next level because it doesn't automatically go over either.
Yeah, you have to move over too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
Well, then you
all
hit the
right, well, I
wrong
beat
button
that
and it just keeps pulling up those bosses. I'm like, why do we
Yeah.
just keep seeing these guys? Like, I don't get it. What's happening here?
Yeah, you have to hit start or something, right, to get into it. Yeah.
Right.
one. Yeah.
I mean, it's not gunboat bad menu system, but it's still not great.
Right. Yeah.
They did such a good job with the rest of the game. Like, how did you screw up the most simple part?
Yeah. It does kind of remind me, it must have been a PC game or something, because that's what it reminds me of, is like
It sure seems like it.
huge maps, and you're just kind of going all these different directions, almost like a maze type thing. Like, oh, I need this item to get up there and this item to get over there, and like almost Commander Keenish style. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit of that mixed with like a little bit of Lemmings,
Mm-hmm.
just in how like it's more about getting yourself to the end of the level than it is about, and interacting in a way to make that happen.
Yep.
I don't know. It's very unique. It just, I think it probably, if I had to guess, I think it's a good enough game. I would guess that this kind of fell victim to the whole, mascot platformer. I mean, sea of competing character games, at that time.
Which I'm so confused
you know-
about. Like, you look at Sonic and you think, okay, that's a badass. They really did a good job marketing him and gave him a nice attitude. And then you make, he looks like somebody crapped in one of those orange sacks that you put leaves in and just like say, here you go.
I was gonna say he looks like a nutsack, like separated from the penis. Is kind of like honestly what, especially the box art. If you really look at that, it's a sack on feet. It's not a great character.
No, so that's like where I'm like, oh, mascot. Like, they really didn't, like, that was their best effort at a mascot.
Right. Like, this guy is the winner. Yeah, that's true. They probably could have come up with a better central character to put on their box art. Because, like, this box art is just, I mean, if I looked at that as a kid on a shelf, like you said, next to Sonic, I know which one I'm grabbing. I got Sonic, I got Rocket Knight, hell, even Arrow the Acrobat. If he was next to Puggsy, I would have grabbed.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. The music's pretty awful, though. Did not enjoy the music.
It's not great. No.
Oh. Well, this is...
It's
I don't really
serviceable,
remember the
though.
music, I guess. I turned the TV down a little bit when I was playing it, so it must have been bad enough to...
Annoy you.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, so this was published by Psygnosis or whatever, but...
Yeah, it's Traveler's Tales and Psygnosis. Yeah, which those two have made, like, both of those are associated with some fairly...
Traveler's
good
Tales,
games.
that's Lego games, right? I think those are the guys that do all the Lego games.
Are they now?
Psygnosis,
Yeah,
I think,
maybe.
is gone now, but they did a ton of good stuff back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, the PlayStation era, they were huge.
Yeah.
They put out Wipeout.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There is a Sega CD
Cool.
version, so I could see maybe the music being a lot better in that one, obviously, but maybe a different soundtrack altogether.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think, like, it's a pretty competent game. It's pretty interesting. I mean, if I had the time to sit down, I mean, I could see this one being a worthwhile addition to a game collection. I certainly would have played something like this growing up back in that era. and I still probably would. I enjoyed it.
Overall, I think it played pretty decent. Like you guys said, though, the controls were kind of just off. When you get near a barrel or anything you're carrying, it sends everything just flying across the screen. That was my biggest issue.
The barrel stacking is by far like the worst. Like it's so touchy.
Yeah. You could jump to and just like land on it, and it sends the middle one just flying out, even if you landed on it perfectly.
I do love that you can scale or you can just like scale down giant like cliffs with an item. Just like sliding down the cliff with an item.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. So the Tick, well, this is obviously the Sega Genesis version. This came out in 1994. So description: it's night in the city, and there's a new superhero in town. As the Tick, you have the powers and abilities unknown to mortal men. You're strong enough to use the city as your personal gym without a care in the world until those pesky ninjas, hoods, and clowns pick you as their target. It's time to jump into the action and destroy these bad guys once and for all. And for anyone who's not familiar, The Tick was a comic book, an animated series, which this is based off of like kind of a goofy comic book hero, sort of Deadpool-ish and like just the comedy vein, I guess.
They had a movie too, I think, didn't they?
They had a TV show.
There was a live action TV show after the animated show, and I think is it Hulu bringing back a live action show?
I think now Amazon, maybe one of those two.
Amazon, yep, it is.
Yeah, they have one of them.
It's Amazon. You're right.
Yeah, so this one basically it's a side-scrolling, I guess, beat 'em up type game. Honestly, this one, the controls were they weren't terrible, but it was really loose for a fighting game, I thought. But the depth perception when you're on, it seems like you're always on a bus.
Yeah.
For the first couple levels, then you get to the buildings. But
the biggest fault too with like the action is just that there's no depth. I mean, there's really no real depth to a combo system, which is, if you're going to keep a beat 'em up game interesting, like you have to have a little bit more than just like 3-button attacks, you know?
Yep.
And everything seemed like they had ranged attacks too, and you didn't.
Well, yeah, it's a weird choice too that you're like going through huge like open stages of levels, and the only thing coming at you in the way of enemies is just like a ninja star from off screen, or a like dagger falling out of the sky. Like that. Yeah. That's bad game design. Yeah. And it's weird because like who's throwing all that stuff at you if nobody's there? Does it just rain ninja stars and like spears in this town? I don't understand.
You gotta get to the end of the level to find that out. Good luck.
Yeah.
There wasn't a ton of personality to it either. Overall, you know what you would expect from The Tick, you know?
Right. I think they like captured some of the personality with the main character, you know, the Tick himself, like some of the gestures, and like he'd do like the flick, like that stuff translated. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, it felt like they took, here's a generic fighting game, like let's take this blueprint and then lay the Tick on top of it. Like he didn't fit into the generic bland world that they built, which I think was weird.
Yeah. And
kind of obvious, you know, that it was just like, okay, we're just going to crank this out quick. I will say the one thing that I thought was amazing was not amazing. It wore itself out very quick, is like when you fell off of ledges, instead of dying, you just go, it pops up an enemy and it's like subplot. And then you're down in the street and you have to like take on another, you know, superhero nemesis guy. And then you go back up to the stage where you fell off the ledge, and it's cool. I mean, the only other game I've ever seen that does that is Clash of Demon Head on the NES.
Yeah,
and it was like one of my favorite features of that game, also. And it also adds, you know, another layer of like that comic book, like sort of series feel to the Tick. You know, there's some good stuff that happens down there. Like, I don't know, did any of you guys like fall into the pit and like come up against that like pseudo Clark Kent Superman character?
Yeah, took me a long time to figure out what you needed to do there.
Right, me too. You punch the crap out of him, and then finally you walk far enough right to pick up the kryptonite, and then it's like one punch done.
Yeah.
So like that stuff like was great, and it made me laugh. The thing is like that's, you know, 1/10 of the game. I mean, it's just not that consistently like tongue in cheek or that consistently like fun. I mean, it's
Yeah, that was the only one I was going to bring up too.
yeah. I loved that. Like that made me laugh. Like I mean, I had a huge dumb smile on my face when I figured that one out. It was good.
Yeah.
I didn't pick that one. I had one where the sprinting across back and forth.
Oh, that guy sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the chainsaw.
Yeah, and that was the
guy.
problem too. Is I was gonna say because like that was where it started to wear thin for me because like I got the chainsaw guy like 3 times. I'm like, if this is as much depth as you're gonna put into this mechanic, like you probably shouldn't run with it so hard because they almost force you to fall in the pits. Because like you said, like just random stuff flying across the screen, it like they always stage them so that they'll hit you and knock you back over a pit and fall in, and not a pit, but like a gap between buildings.
And he's just such a giant sprite.
Oh, huge, yeah, and that
It's everything.
Yep. Yeah, it's just tough because like this is a beat 'em up game on a system with some of the greatest beat 'em ups of all time. You know, the Tick just can't hold its own on the Genesis. I mean, it's one defining characteristic. You know, just the goofiness of the Tick is not well executed, and the rest of the game doesn't stand up against any of its counterparts in that genre.
It must have random.
Random what?
Oh, when you fall in the pit, it must be random bosses or whatever that show up then, huh? It's not set ones?
It's randomized, but I think it's like a limited set that can appear because I think that's where I started seeing the repetition like pretty quickly.
I had 3 of those speed guys in a row.
That's brutal. Yeah, he
That's
was
when I
the
gave
worst.
On the third one, I was like, fuck this. I'm done.
Well, yeah, there was no strategy to that other than wait for him to come back, punch, sidestep, wait for him to come back, punch, sidestep. This is dumb. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of like, I mean, that kind of sums up the game to me. It's like it's one coolest feature is also the thing that like makes you want to walk away from it after a while, you know?
Yeah, especially since you're, like you said, practically forced down there constantly.
It's too bad. Has anyone played the Super Nintendo version? Is it the same game, do you know, or was this like a case of where they're slightly different?
I bet it's the same game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I like the transition. Like right away, you start off on that bus, which kind of sucks in like a getting your, but beat 'em ups are all about getting in the same lane as the enemies to get it, the same plane to punch them. And if they're toward the bottom, it's easy to just like jump over and fall right off the bus. And it was kind of abrupt beginning to that game. And then immediately after that, it's like, oh, now we're in 2D, we're a 2D platformer. It's like, okay.
Right. Yeah. It was a weird introductory stage. It was like super limited and super difficult to stay in control. Yeah, I agree.
Plus basic ninjas are boring.
Yeah. What are you talking about? They had 3 different colors, red, blue, and black.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
I mean, it's nowhere near the top tier like Growl is, so.
Well, nothing can compete with Growl. All right, so let's move on to Death Duel. So Death Duel, I'll read the description here. I read this description ahead of time, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this might be the best description of any game we'll have on Buy Rent Burn in a good long time. So the description of this one: the searing hiss of metal breaks the silence of dawn. As I step through the fleshy remains of my previous opponent, I realize the metal behemoth is about to face more fiercely equipped with deadly rotobore proton rockets. I know I represent our final hope as I mount the Federation's newest war machine, the A7 Trinity Cyborg. The signal is given. I must proceed to the dueling ground. Today, death is in the air and mercy in my guns. So let him beg for mercy.
Wow.
And end scene.
Yeah.
That second line, step through the fleshy remains. It's like, that's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like George R.R. Martin wrote that or something.
I'm going to go on a limb here and say if the ESRB existed in this game came out, this would have gotten an M.
Yeah.
Just on that description alone.
Yeah. Among other things that we've seen in the game, too. So.
Yes. Nipple pixels, anyone? We'll get to that. But so basically what Death Duel is you live in this future, I don't know what year it is, where every intergalactic and Federation like argument is settled not by law or courts, it's settled by death duels. So they put robots and monsters and whatever into battles to kill each other, and you decide your political outcomings by victory or death. And this is a very unique game. It almost looks like you'd be playing this as a light gun game, where you're in a first-person view of sorts, I guess, staring down an opponent across the field. There are some barriers and things that come up in the way, little bits of cover that you can duck behind. But basically, the strategy is just to figure out the weakness of each opponent, which particular weapon will deal the most damage to said opponent, and attack that weak spot and exploit it. So there's quite a bit of trial and error, and it's all done with sort of this weird, like steampunk, post-apocalyptic art style and like vibe around it, I guess. What did you guys think of it?
When I first seen it, I was like, "Oh, this has potential." It seemed like it'd be an interesting game. That first boss you go against, it gives you the preset, I guess, ammo or rounds, whatever you want to call them. And like a couple of them, it seemed like the fireball was like kind of like it curved up, so you could like get it under certain blocks and stuff when you would, so you could like destroy the wall and then actually hit it underneath them and get the legs out of them and stuff. Just the aspect of that was kind of cool, but then it got extremely frustrating because all he sat was behind the wall. So then you couldn't do anything else once you took his legs out. So you're either waiting, 30 seconds for him to move. You can kind of draw him out by moving back and forth across the screen, and he'll kind of try to follow you. But it was super frustrating. I did actually beat the first two, and then I got to where you would purchase again, and that's when I quit. The second boss was even worse. Just he's so fast.
Yeah, well, that second one always loves to run to the edge of the screen where he's still on screen, but you can't shoot. Like if you don't take his legs out right away, you are screwed.
Yep. It was kind of funny. Like we made a video kind of on this for our YouTube channel just to preview this game a little bit, and that was by far the most irritating thing, was that guy going to the edge of the screen and you can't shoot over to him, and he can still shoot you, no problems. But yeah, getting to him was just kind of sucked. But yeah, hiding behind the walls, that's kind of, I can't believe this isn't like a Menacer game, like you said, like a light gun game.
Right. Yep.
It's kind of surprising that wasn't an option, but
yeah, and we kind of touched on it like jokingly in the stream, where it's like, you carved a part off this monster, like skin it like you would in Monster Hunter. And I feel like that's the sort of game this is. It's a game that like doesn't hold your hand and doesn't really point stuff out to you. But if you're willing to like sink the time into it and deal with like some of the random shit you can't control, when you do finally pull off a win, like it's extremely satisfying. It's just that it requires a lot of trial and error. It's not going to tell you what you need to do or what you need to attack or what weapon set you need to do that. So in that sense, like you're going to be trying stuff and failing repeatedly before you progress. So, I mean, I think that's good and bad depending on the kind of player you are. I mean, it certainly can be frustrating. And it is. I mean, for me, it got frustrating, but it still feels good when you pull off the win. I do really like the art style, and not just for this reason, but we talked about how it's kind of ridiculous because it's sort of like an edgy game. It's the sort of game you kind of would have expected on the Genesis back then. Like, you've got the round girl or card girl that kind of comes out and holds the, like kicks off the match each time, and she's wearing like Daisy Dukes and has obviously large breasts because, I don't know, video games. But then the addition of a pixel for a nipple on each boob seems unnecessary and kind of hilarious, given that this came out in 1992. Like, if I was a kid and played this in 1992 at the age I was, I would love this game just for that. But then like some of the other like ridiculousness, like the cool art style, like the shop guy with the like little flashing LED or LCD sign that just says "Touch my monkey," and he's got like a monkey that sits on his shoulder. Like I don't know. There's so much like tongue in cheek, like goofiness to this that it kind of rounds out the package. But all in all, it's a very strange game. Like I don't know that I've played any other game other than a light gun game, which this feels very closely modeled after that, handles like this, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that shopkeeper looks straight out of Mad Max, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
But the violence in the game is something even above most Sega games in 1992. Mortal Kombat wasn't quite out yet, right?
Yeah,
on
that's true.
Sega, where it's like, I mean, you can shoot these guys' heads right off, and it's just a bloody stump,
Yeah, every limb is destroyable. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
One thing I was kind of hoping that you would actually be able to see give a description about the ammo as you're purchasing it, because you don't know anything about it. Really.
Yeah, that is its biggest downfall.
That's where the trial and error comes in, but it would have just been nice to, I guess, be able to see that a little bit of description on it. Yeah,
they could have fixed that really easily if they'd have given you even if they'd have just had like a shooting range where like you could test out like 3 rounds of each ammo, before you purchased. Because that's really all they needed to or stats, like this is effective against X, that was a key element that was missing from this game to really, let you strategize a little bit more, because you kind of have to memorize then at what each weapon does. And that's asking a lot of a player.
Yeah, and some of them are just worthless.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, verdict time?
Yep.
Andy, do you want to start off with your picks?
Yeah, sure. For my buy, I'm going to take Puggsy, just because I rented that one quite a bit when I was a kid. I know I rented at least twice. So it kind of has a nostalgia factor to me, but also like coming back to it, it's like, okay, they were doing some impressive stuff on an old Sega game, and they kind of pulled it off for the most part. So I could see myself playing that even more, because the puzzles do get a little bit better. I mean, it's still like traversing the whole area to find the certain items that you need, but it's still kind of like that Chips challenge, like, hey, I need this key to get to this key and all that stuff. So I kind of like those games, but yeah, I think I'll take that for my buy. For my rent, I'm going to go with Death Duel, because I don't know, overall, like we played it up there. I had a good amount of time just laughing, having fun with it, but overall it's kind of a frustrating game. But I think if you put more time into it and kind of master, like exactly like kind of like what you said, like you can't just play Monster Hunter for an hour and expect to get the whole sense of, progression out of that, where this is probably like a precursor to that game. So I don't know. I kind of like that idea, but I don't think I would probably play it again. And I'm going to burn the tick, because while it is a competent beat 'em up game, and the sprites look good, and as far as the tick goes, and the other bigger enemies, I think that's the most boring game we've played on this whole show, all the way through. Like, it's perfectly fine, like beat 'em up style, but there's nothing to it, and I was extremely bored. And that probably says something about beat 'em up games in, our era now. They're already kind of a leg behind in that regard, but when it's the bottom of the barrel of all those games, then it's a problem. But yeah, that's going to be my burn.
Nice. Justin, how about you?
Yeah, mine are all probably going to be pretty similar here. So my buy is actually going to be Puggsy. I kind of enjoyed this one, other than the issues with the stacking of stuff and just the general issue with carrying stuff, moving it around. But the overall game was actually pretty fun, I thought. So that one's going to be my buy. My rent is going to be Death Duel. Just mainly because I feel like it had a lot of potential. It was kind of a very frustrating game. And like I said, I played it for, I don't know, 40 minutes maybe. And when I finally got through that second boss or enemy, that's when I felt like I had enough done on it. And it was fun. I feel like you need way too much time to invest into it. And I don't really want to do that. But that would be my rent. My burn is going to be the Tick. I feel like I didn't really like this game all that much. I felt like it played all right and stuff. The enemies is just, like Andy said, it was really repetitive. You get the same 3 enemies that keep coming on the screen. You get the one with swords, the one with the throwing star, and I don't know what the other one was, I don't know. It just wasn't that much fun for me, so I'm going to burn that one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess unsurprisingly, I'm kind of shocked at this one that we're all kind of lining up here. But yeah, for the same, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I liked Puggsy, actually. It was weird. It's got some problems, but I could totally sit down with that game for a few hours and enjoy myself. Death Duel, of course, like we've been saying, I think there is another layer there. You look at Death Duel like you look at like a Punch-Out or something. Like, I'm not going to sit down and play that game all the time, so it's a perfect rental. But every once in a while, I'm going to try and progress as far as I can, and that's kind of where that game sits for me. So it makes a perfect rental game. And yeah, the Tick is the most generic, bland beat 'em up I've played in quite some time. I mean, it's just repetitive, mindless button mashing, which a lot of beat 'em ups are, but most beat 'em ups have more strategy and depth than this. The only redeeming factor for it for me was like the nostalgia I had for the character itself. But just like in real life, if you find a Tick, you torch that thing, and I'm torching the Tick with the Genesis. Sadly, it was the game that I thought was going to take the top of this list for me, but it is a disappointment.
And how do you ruin a jump kick in a beat 'em up game?
Exactly. Like, that was my biggest issue.
Yeah, that's the go-to. That was like the first thing I tried.
Like,
so bad.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like the Turtles games are, about perfect as far as for beat 'em up and what I would actually like.
Oh yeah.
And I was really hoping that this would be something like that, but no.
No.
Your comparison though for Death Duel to Punch-Out, like that actually,
yeah,
I agree with that. Like, you have to learn each fighter in Punch-Out and figure out how to beat them. Yeah, same concept here.
It's a little more broke than Punch-Out, but yeah, it's it is. It would line up as far as like the way you would approach that game. It wouldn't be like I'm going to sit down all day and play this, but every once in a while I would learn. I'd know how to take on the next opponent, and on the right day I might get my timing down and it would work out.
And there are more nipples in Punch-Out than Death Duel.
Oh.
Just
let's go back and play some more Punch-Out.
They're just on the male variety, so.
Oh, I'm definitely going to go back and play more Punch-Out. Yeah. Let me find my copy of Punch-Out. I'll be right back, guys.